Hi, I'm Celeste and welcome to Find Your Purple. Well, the sermon this week at church was about the road to Emmaus. It takes place the original Easter Sunday. Two of the followers of Jesus are walking home to Emmaus, which is, I think they said, 7 miles or so from Jerusalem, and Jesus joins them. Somehow God makes it so that they don't recognize him. And he asks why they're down and depressed, and they're explaining, haven't you heard what happened? And they express how disappointed they are. They thought Jesus was going to be the king that saved them from the Romans. And in fact, he was crucified. Now, they did admit his body's gone, but they didn't seem to believe that he had risen from the dead. So Jesus ends up talking to them about all the Old Testament that the Jewish have been using for hundreds of years, proclaimed what was going to happen, down to the donkey that he was going to ride into Jerusalem, down to the 30 pieces of silver that Judas gets when he betrays him, and that the Pharisees end up buying a field, a potter's field, I think they called it, with it. All of that was written by the prophets, and yet they didn't recognize it. So Jesus joins them for dinner, and when he breaks bread with them, God opens their eyes, and they recognize him as Jesus Christ, and he really did come back from the dead. At that point, he disappears, and then they run back to Jerusalem and prove another point of reference of where Jesus was seen. But the thing that struck me when our pastor was talking about it is how the Old Testament really does lead up to the New Testament. When I started reading the Bible back in the fall, it was a rocky road. I didn't get anything out of it. I was not getting a peace. I wasn't getting any ahas. I didn't understand what was going on. And one of my brothers who teaches the Bible in his church kept saying, stay with it. Just keep reading. Eventually it will make sense. And I have read and listened to sermons, and it says, never is reading the Bible a waste of time. The process of reading it means you will get something out of it. And I didn't get it immediately. It took 6 to 8 weeks before, the scales came off, that reading it became an experience rather than drudgery. And as my brother said, I'm in Romans now, so I'm going to be probably done with the Bible in the next couple months, my first read through. But everything does tie together, and he said it would. But it's so amazing that people don't believe when, again, you see things written over and over again, hundreds of years apart, and they're all detailing an event that was going to happen hundreds of years later. And yet still people at that very time who had studied the Old Testament, lived and breathed it, didn't recognize Jesus as the Messiah because he didn't come back in the victorious way that they had expected. Reading the Bible is an amazing process for me. It's interesting how, again, back in October, I didn't think I could finish it. I thought it was boring, it was a drudgery, it didn't make sense. The Old Testament was bloody, but sticking with it, the pieces start falling in place, and it starts making sense, and then it starts becoming the living Bible that I've heard of. So I encourage you, if you're tempted at all to pick one up, you can get them for a few dollars on Amazon, and start reading it, and be prepared that it might not click right away. Just staying with it, putting that effort in and reading a little bit every day, it's like suddenly something changes. So I think there is, I know the word magic isn't appropriate, could offend people, but there is a magic to it. It's God's Word. It's the living Bible, and I see that next year when I read again, I'll be in a different place emotionally and spiritually, and so the Bible will say something different to me. I now believe that. I didn't before. I was told that, but I didn't buy it. I see now how that might be happening. So that's it for the day. Grab your cup of tea. sit back and let's start sharing. I'd be curious how many of you have read the Bible and how many times have you read it? Put it in the comments below. And do you remember how old you were when you started reading it, and if you enjoyed it right away, or did it connect with you right away? I'm just curious with people's journey with the Bible, because again, it's not something I'd even wanted to talk about this time last year. I'm in such a different place emotionally, spiritually, than I was a year ago that I have to attribute it all to my journey and how the Bible has become a key part of it. So until tomorrow, bye-bye.